You're listening to Dene Michael here on True Radio, the home of proper good music. And my friend is here tonight, all the way from Scotland, Mr. Owen Paul. Hi, Owen, you there?
Here, Dean, I'm still here.
So I'd like to tell our listeners now about your time with Mike and the Mechanics.
Yeah.
Paul Carrick, is it?
Paul Carrick, Mike Rutherford from Genesis. I got very fortunate in the sort of quiet years when I was mainly working behind the scenes as a record producer, and I wasn't releasing records on my own for one reason or another. I got very fortunate. One time I was working in a studio down south in England, and the very posh Mike Rutherford was next door, and he heard some of my tracks that I was working on, right?
Yeah.
And Mike is very, "Oh, hello, dear boy. Could you inform me who exactly did the vocal arrangements on this track that you're playing at this point?" I was like, well, Mike, that was me, actually. I said, I'm singing some of it. I said, but I arranged the vocal harmonies and put them in place and whatever. So he says to me, this is like 2001, I think, something like that. Yeah. So he says, we're thinking of making a new Mechanics album. Would you like to be involved in that? And we just send you the tracks, and then you sing whatever you like, and then you send it back to us, and then me and Paul Carrick go through it all, and we choose what we like.
Yeah.
I was like, can I bite your hand off? What happened? They sent me their new album because they work in a very, even back then, they worked in a very unorthodox way. It's very commonplace now for people to collaborate in that style, but then it wasn't. And they would send me rough, weird song bits and pieces, and I'd record it in studios and then put on the vocals and send it back. Anyway, the album that they released off the back of it was called Rewired, which did very well for them. And then I got another phone call some months later. "Hello, Owen, dear boy. It's Mike on the phone here." I was like, "Hi, Mike, how's things?" He went, "Absolutely delightful. Da, 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 da." He said, "Would you like to go on a world tour with us as one of the mechanics?" I said, "Pardon?" He said, "Would you like to go on the world tour with us? We're going to be joining in with Phil Collins' farewell tour at football stadiums all over the world." I was like, "Can you bite my other hand off?"
So lucky. Yeah.
And that's what happened. I hadn't performed in public for something like 20 years. And I went from the opposite to my early career, where I used to play in pubs to 5 people and then clear the place out because I wasn't good enough. I now went from not performing to anyone for 20 years, and all of a sudden I'm at the Bernabeu Stadium in Spain in front of 85,000, joining in with Mike and the Mechanics singing "The Living Years" over my shoulder.
What a fantastic song. It's like you say, Owen, you just don't know what's around the corner, do you? You don't know what's coming next.
Well, I've always been built. I mean, obviously, it's part of my character, especially coming from punk, that anything goes, and much that structure is good and rehearsals is good and whatever. I like to be off the cuff and make things up on a whim, and a bit like my early success with Favorite Waste of Time and other things. I didn't plan any of that, and I was just ready for when something random came up.
Yeah.
And then Mike Rutherford says to you randomly in a corridor, "Would you like to go on a world tour?" I go, "My bags are packed, Mike." When do you leave?
You always have to have a bag packed, don't you, just in case.
Listen, Dean, I've had my passport on my being, like personally, either on my jacket or in my jeans pocket for something like 30 years.
Yeah, just in case.
Sometimes I've had a phone call at like 6 a.m. in the morning. "Can you get to Germany by 10? And off I go. No clothes, no bags, no nothing.
Just off you go.
I have the passport, baby. I'm ready.
Owen, we spoke earlier about your song, "The Beauty of the Sun," that you've been #1 again just recently, this last few months, isn't it?
Fantastic.
Unbelievable.
Mike Reid, that everyone knows from Pop Quiz and his Radio 1 show from back in the day. Him, Tony Prince, Kid Jensen, and a few others built a radio station called United DJs. And it's a cracking station. And the basic premise of the station was to bring back personality into radio, a bit like you do on your show.
Yeah.
As opposed, as opposed to what the big companies tell you, you must say this and you must say that. They allow the DJs to do their own thing and play their own kind of music. So anyway, that was the start of it. And it's doing very, very well. And then they came up with this idea, which is a brilliant idea, called the Heritage Chart. And the Heritage Chart is basically acts that everyone knows and has been associated with for many, many years, like I mentioned earlier before, Howard Jones, Paul Simon, say, Midge Ure, Nick Kershaw, Chesney Hawkes.
Yeah.
Basically what it is that the chart is based on new material from those acts. Because it's not like the 80s finished and they suddenly became rubbish.
Exactly, yeah.
Basically what happened was they were still making music, but they weren't in the mainstream, and other national stations all across the country don't play them because they're playing the new Adele song or Ed Sheeran song or whatever, and there's no room for it. And basically the chart is based on any act that you know from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and whatever that are making new material. The key is new material. So it's not another version of Favorite Waste of Time.
Exactly. It's like you say, it's like brand new songs.
Brand new material. And
Yeah.
I was, when they first launched the chart, something like 2.5, nearly 3 months ago, I appeared right away in the top 20, and I was like, whoa. And then slowly, and then I was surrounded, like I mentioned, by Status Quo or the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Travis is another one that was in there. And Johnny Hates Jazz. And then slowly but surely over the next few weeks, we went from something like 18 to 12, then to 9, then to 6. And I got my first ever UK #1 about 3 weeks ago. So I'm absolutely delighted with the whole thing.
Fantastic. Oh, Owen, I'm so proud of you. I really am. It's wonderful. And it's been wonderful having you on my program this evening. And I can't wait to get back to do the Let's Rocks next year.
Hey, listen, I'm sure it's the same for many people in other walks of life, but for us, especially the arts and the performing arts in particular, are the last line of a queue of things that are being helped to get back on their feet. So, I mean, it may be a long way off, and hopefully by next summer we'll be out there. But, obviously safety comes first. I understand that. As long as the artists and whatever get some government help in the same way that every other business is getting help, then you and I will be there.
We will, definitely. So, Owen Paul, all it leaves for me to remain to ask you is, will you introduce your song, your big hit from the 80s?
Okay, this is Owen Paul, and my biggest hit, which is still keeping me in work 30 years on, My Favorite Waste of Time.